Hi everyone, welcome. We're just giving it a couple more minutes to let people into the webinar, and then we'll be getting started.
Okay, I think Akeim is now back with us. There was a bit of an issue on his side, but if he is, we're gonna be able to start. I already have a message in the chat saying that the sound is not very good. Róisín and Lucy, can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay, so.
Yeah. Sorry, on my end.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start. It seems like technology is not completely on our side today, but that's usual with Zoom events. So yeah, Róisín and I and all HCRI are very happy to welcome Diala Brisly and Akeim Toussaint. Diala from Paris, I reckon, and Akeim from a town in Devon that I already forgot.
I live in Valence, not Paris.
In where? Sorry.
In Valence.
In Valence, in France.
Yes.
Okay, which is, by the way, my hometown. So that's
really
interesting connection. Good. We can chat about that later. But yeah, I'm born and raised in Valence. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we're really happy to welcome them both. Of course, it's part of the Refugee Week celebration, but also other connection with the Manchester International Festival. A bit of background that Róisín is gonna explain in a minute. But just to say on the more practical level, so as you probably saw already, the event is going to be recorded and later available on YouTube, I reckon, on the HCRI account. The idea is to have an hour and 20 minutes approximately of discussion and then a Q&A. Feel free at any time to pop any question in the chat, and then we'll pass them on to Akeim and Diala. So yeah, I'm not going to say anything in terms of background. You saw the bios already, and I think it's better that they explain their own background and trajectories in their own words. But just to say again that we're like super happy to have them both, and I'm going to let now Róisín give a little bit of the rationale behind the event.
Yeah, thank you very much, Antoine. So our interest in this topic really came from conversations that Antoine and I were having about how we can, in our own research, kind of visualize trajectories of displacement. So in the case of my research, this was about trying to take interview data about the experiences of Darfuri refugees in Chad, and create a kind of story map that kind of brought together the trajectories of the journeys that people had taken with their own narratives about it. And in the case of Antoine, it was more about kind of piecing together the trajectories of Jewish refugees who left for Canada during the Second World War. So we'd been kind of having a conversation about how we as academics kind of engage in processes of kind of telling stories about displacement and visualizing it. In the case of my own experience of that, one of the things we found difficult as part of that project was that it often kind of flattened the experience, the sort of story map, and it created a very sort of linear trajectory that didn't really communicate the experiences of people's displacement, the emotional resonances that has. And so one of the things that we started thinking about and started looking into a bit more was about how artists had kind of communicated those sorts of experience. And those conversations led us to both of your creative practices and kind of thinking about how we can maybe communicate these experiences in more three-dimensional ways, in ways that kind of preserve people's experience and humanity. And so we kind of started thinking about this. Obviously, one of the Manchester International Festival kind of exhibits this year is The Walk, which is a project taking this puppet on the kind of journey of a refugee, representing a 3.5 meter high puppet of a refugee. And so we started thinking about how could we engage in this conversation. And so we're really interested in kind of how you both approach these elements in your own artistic practice. But I wonder if you could kind of start by telling us a little bit about your artistic practice to kind of introduce it to our audiences. How did it develop, and what do you consider to be the kind of key elements of it? Because I know that you have many kind of different elements. So perhaps Akeim, if you want to go first, and then I'll pass over to Diala to talk about her creative practice.
Okay, so I'll just start So dance is like the main part of my practice. It's the center of the nucleus. It's the nucleus of the cell. It's the center of the nucleus. I'm tired, so pardon me if sometimes I might say stuff that'll make no sense. Yeah, so dance is the center of the cell. That is my practice, and I'd say from a young age, I've always been interested in people's stories and how the information about people help you to reflect on yourself. And I feel like that's an intrinsic human thing as well. So around that, I also do creative writing. I write poetry quite a bit, and I'm very much interested in the ability of the voice to convey emotion, whether you're speaking an actual language or not. The emotional tones in which we can communicate, I find super interesting. I kind of just stumbled on creating windows of displacement. Seeing as we're talking about displacement, I'll talk more directly about that piece of work. But even though I stumbled on the idea of creating it, it was very much what I was experiencing at the same time and have experienced even before the moment of inception. Because yeah, I moved to England when I was 10, and not until I was 13 did I finally get an indefinite leave to remain, and then from that point, then going through other processes to reach, I think I was 20 something when I got a British passport. So that experience is such an in-between worlds place. Not just the moving, the decision, oh, I'm gonna go to that place over there, but also the actual process. You know, there's a word they call naturalization. You're being naturalized to then take on another citizen identity, which is just weird if you actually think in a more broader spectrum of reality. You know, these borders, these countries, these flags, what do they really mean? And what are they actually used for? To be honest, it's a money scheme because, you know, yeah, people's ability and people's need to thrive, for me, is more important than whatever nation they come from. And I feel like that is really what my work is about in every aspect, whether it's windows of displacement, whether it's souls and cells, whether it's reckoning of a refugee. I'm really about waving a flag about human existence, like the core and the reality and the truth of human existence, not just our suit and tie, not just our flag, not just our patriarchal capitalist system, but the dirt that we are born from, the stardust that we actually are, according to science. I'm not just a voodoo spirit person. Yeah, I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A fantastic reflection on your practice to kick us off. Diala, do you want to kind of jump in and say a little bit about your practice and how you approach it?
Like when I started working in art, I started like in a TV channel to do TV shows for kids and children magazine, and like comics, illustrations, but actually I didn't at that time I didn't have a drive, especially like in Syria under the dictatorship. There was a lot of things they were forbidden to talk about, and different shades in between. So like politics, sex, religions, but actually it's much wider than this. So in 2011, when the revolution started, I didn't think immediately to participate in by art. I started like going to the street, being in the field, preparing field hospitals. But in 2012, I felt it's a big urge, especially that we felt we were kind of betrayed by the media, first of all, because like we were like watching how the media like spreading like fake news sometimes of what is happening. So it was like a big urge for me to do some art to talk about what is happening in Syria. And now we feel like we don't have our own narration. So it's still a big urge to be involved, talk about what is happening and what happened before, why we are here, because we started a revolution. Why started a revolution? Because it wasn't really all right before. It wasn't okay. So yes, like it's really important to have our own narration.
Diala, can you?
Oh,
sorry, Róisín. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel like that's an element that came out of both of you, this need to communicate a kind of different reality to the one that you're seeing presented, whether that's through the kind of media, whether that's your own experience and how you kind of go about doing that. Sorry, Antoine, feel free to jump in with a...
No, it's a very like short and like factual question for Diala. Diala, can you remind us, when did you leave Syria?
I left Syria in 2013. I left to Istanbul. Then I left to Beirut, and each journey it had a different approach in my artwork, because before it was completely political, and then when I moved to Lebanon, for me, I found how it's a big urge to support alternative education, while we can't really be decision makers in terms of politics. So while the war is happening, kids, they are the future. They are Syria, if we want to define. They are losing their childhood, which is like really a short term. So now in the end of 2016, I came to France, and I found also how sometimes when people they hear I'm Syrian, they immediately think of ISIS. So that really pushed me to think, okay, there is problem here. People, they get their information from the media, and media, they have everything. Some people, they have the good information. Some people, they think just about ISIS. So that's why I think like really it's important to have our own narration, because also when there is like photographs for documenting events, it's also exhausting and normalizing what is happening. War photos, they are similar. News, they make people as numbers. Refugees, they are numbers. Victims in Syria, they are numbers. So we need to personalize our story. We need to talk our own. We need to talk about our own story. We need to tell our own story, because otherwise, if we didn't do it, someone else will do it for us, and we won't be satisfied.
I wanted to. Do either of you have a particular audience in mind for your kind of thinking about that sort of communicating a different reality? Is it sort of a broader public, or do you, when you create, have a particular audience in mind? I don't know if anyone wants to jump in and answer that.
What? Okay. Like for me, in the beginning, I started like just to express my own feeling and the frustration and disappointment. So then like the audience came after, because before I wasn't thinking of the audience. So it was like almost by graphic, by alternative journalism in Syria. So just to support their reports, they were using our art. And after that, a lot of people from outside of Syria, they were following what is happening in Syria. So I realized how important also to influence other audience. They are outside of Syria. But also it depends on the needs of each phase. For example, when I was in Lebanon working with kids, I started like an initiative to do murals in refugee camps to encourage alternative education. So my audience there, they were the kids in the refugee camps. So it was like a small community, and kids from a camp to another, they were telling each other about what is happening. There was no internet, so that was like really interesting and more fun for me to know, like, oh, you are the artist who did this and that in the camp. So now it really depends. So, and also now I realize how it's important to think of the audience, because like the artwork changes. When I work with kids, I try to put the elements that they can support them, cheer them up, give them a different narration. They can change what they have, even if they can't leave the camp. But if I want to talk about the kids, for example, in the refugee camp to other people, it's a different side of the story. So of course I will talk about like the hard side, how kids, they really need help, how they don't even have the basic in their life, like the lack of education, lack of it's like they live in a survival mode. They have to be adult very early. So it's just the subject of the kids in the refugee camps. It has different different elements in the artwork, if I'm talking with them or about them.
Akeim, did you want to?
Yeah, similarly, it really, I didn't start off thinking about the audience that much. I saw a need to communicate something. Like, that's how I feel about any work. I just see a need to communicate something or to deliver an experience, and I want to make I try to make things as open and as accessible, mind-wise and heart-wise, so that people can be touched. My favorite artist, one of my favorite artists, is Bob Marley. And Bob Marley has a quote where he says, I'm going to paraphrase: "If a baby can't understand my songs, then what's the point?" That's how I see it. You know, for me, my other favorite artist, Nina Simone. Nina Simone says, again, I'm going to paraphrase: "Artists should reflect the times." And in a book, one of my favorite books, The Healing Wisdom of Africa by Maledome Patrice Some, he says the artist is like the shaman. Like, we're supposed to look at what the Maya is, that the crazy, confused, chaotic world, and connect people back to the truth. That's what I feel, anyways. And that, whether that's, for instance, play, participating in a living atmosphere of yourself, where myself and my collaborator Otis Jones, we're really connecting people to the inner child, because that is a liberator. We're all fighting our inner child because we have to pay the bills and we have to work and this and that inhibits us, that stresses us out. So whether we're creating a space where we can play, that is, to me, that's a revolutionary act. To me, that is activism as well. Or Lead Seeds, where I got, it's an intergenerational project, and we got kids to work with elderly, to ask them questions about what was the past of the neighborhood, and how can we reimagine the future of the neighborhood, and actually take ownership of those streets, and actually feel like, yo, we're connected to this place. The audience, I don't know, the audience is everybody. The audience should be everybody. You know, I want a grandma to feel that story. I want a little 5-year-old to be like, oh my God, Jimi Hendrix, who's Jimi Hendrix? Because one of the stories of Chapeltown is Jimi Hendrix performed in Chapeltown, but it's not a place where rock music is appreciated. Let's say that. And the famous story is he got booed off stage. And then the next day he performed in Harrogate, where rock music, it's like, say like 10 miles or something down the way. And he performed there, and it was like, whoa, you got, you know, appreciated. But that's amazing. Like, imagine Jimi Hendrix getting booed off stage. But that neighborhood, those stories are just lost. They're just, no one talks about these things. No one's passing down these things. So for me, the audience is not just who is going to consume, but it's who is going to participate. It's who is going to give the art itself more life, not just from the experience, but from how does that affect their story. So for me, it's everybody.
Akeim, to follow on that, so yeah, you're talking about how, of course, you want your audience to be as wide as possible. But I remember in your documentary on windows of displacement, you're talking in particular about young people, and you're saying that young people you feel are quite insecure when it comes to talking about politics, and you see your artistic practice as a way to give confidence to young people to engage in politics and to talk more about politics. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, because at the time when when I was developing Windows of Displacement, the refugee situation was very much in the media. Brexit was happening, all these things, and I could feel this air with young people of what should we do? What is the decision we should make? Because the power is essentially in the young, well, it should be in the young people's hands. And for me, Windows of Displacement are just creative prep. My work in general is a thought instigator. That's how I see it. To instigate people to feel like, okay, let me go research that. Let me go find out more about that. Or ooh, did I ever say something quite racist or something quite misogynistic or something? Just getting people to self reflect. And I feel like the young people, especially, um, need that as well because, like Diala just said, they're the future, and where we're gonna go, how far we go, is determined by how expanded young people's minds are and hearts are, because we want to evolve. Yeah.
Thank you both. A question to the two of you. I think so. It's quite clear, of course, how present your own experience of, to say it broadly, like this place is influencing your art. But a question that we were asking ourselves with Róisín throughout the organization of that event, and I think that kind of echoes to Diala, what you said earlier. You were saying, oh, it's Refugee Week, like it's going to be a very busy time, and I'm going to need a vacation after that. And Akeim, I know that same for you. Your week is quite busy. You're going to have the forthcoming collaboration with Peter Gatrell, one of our HCRI colleagues, for the Journey Festival. Do you think sometimes that people kind of force on you this identity of being displaced, being a refugee, being a migrant, and kind of end up overshadowing you as a human being, as an artist? Do you think that they, the word kind of essentialize? And when I say they, it's potentially me and Róisín inviting you for this event here. Do you think that sometimes your identity of as displaced is overshadowing the rest in the eyes of others?
Should I go? I'll go. Yeah. I really want to commend both of you for bringing up that question because that's exactly what I'm talking about. The idea, the fact that you just took yourself out of the situation and came up with this question that actually interrogates your position is amazing. And we need more of that. We need people to interrogate their positions in society. And then I'm going to answer the question. Yes, it depends. I didn't feel that with this situation because I feel like my most successful work is Windows of Displacement and it's in the title. I feel like at times, yes, I do feel a sense of pigeonholed held because of I made this piece about displacement and my experience. And then I see it with programmers. For instance, when I try to get Play, which is a completely different tone to Windows of Displacement, when I try to get that programmed, theaters are a bit like, what? We thought you were this. How do we program you as this? You're supposed to be this. And it's like, no, I am whatever I say I am, in the words of Eminem. If I wasn't, why would I say I am? And yeah, it can get frustrating. It can get really frustrating, but we don't stop because, you know, we love what we do. So regardless of the pigeonholing and the misunderstanding of one's artistic identity and integrity, you have to just know yourself. You know?
Diala, do you want to add to
Yes,
this?
definitely.
Thank you.
Because like, yeah, there was time it was really frustrating for me to be labelized as a Syrian artist. It's like there is always creators, for example, they want to do art about like with Syrian artists, put us all together. There is many aspects that I don't know where I should start with, because for example, like me coming to France in 2016, and started like being parachuting in this host society and trying to integrate, and like always putting us all together in one gallery to display our work as a Syrian artist. We know each other's back in Syria, but we need to meet other people, and we need to express our own identity that it's not related to what is happening in Syria, because what is happening in Syria started like in 2011. Yes, it has a background even before, 40 years ago when Assad took place, but this is all of this is happening, but this is not me. Of course, I need the space to explain what is happening in Syria, and I like, I appreciate, and I like to have this chance to talk about this story. But also, yes, I like Akeim said, like I have to be free to talk about myself. For example, I have a big interest now to talk about trauma, that it's not just related to me, it's related to people, not just they passed the war, also trauma now, it's a big subject internationally, and sometimes it's clear, and sometimes it's not, because people, they think that there should be like a big event happen to you to talk about this. So I have like a notebook, I write on it a lot of ideas. I don't know when I am going to do them, because it's a big pressure always to talk about politics, about like I mean, if there is no sometimes I feel like one day when this crisis ends, I am going to do this and this and this, but I don't know when it's going to end, because like you can see Palestine, for example. So yes, sometimes I feel there is frustration from this. It's like stealing part of me, like to express of really my own problems.
It's really, really interesting how you both framed the kind of limitations that puts on you. And I wonder if I can ask a bit of a follow-up question. So Akeim, earlier you described yourself as an activist. Diala, I don't know if you would also describe yourself as an activist, but again, how do you understand the relationship between your artwork, kind of an activist identity, if you do have that, and kind of social change? And you, Diala, you're just saying there about the sort of responsibility you feel to kind of present these issues because they're current and they matter, you know, mentioning Palestine. So really important, very live issues, with exploring other aspects of yourself that maybe don't directly or as directly obviously connect to your activism. Does that make sense? So I wonder if you can say a little bit about how you see the relationship between your artistic practice, activism, and maybe kind of your sort of position, or how you've been positioned in the world. Diala, I don't know if you want to go first.
Yeah, like for me, I believe activism is like a daily practice. It's like you do it with your in your kitchen, you do it everywhere, you know. And art is my life, so definitely they have to cross. You know, they are really very best friends. And for me, art is a language, and activism it's a daily practice. So I need to talk about it all the time by art, and it's personal. Actually, it's because activism sometimes it sounds like it's something social, it's something like in a group wise, but it's personal, because when you live at a specific kind of events, you are not doing solidarity with someone. It's touching your personal life. So I can't really separate it, and I live life. I don't know what is normal life, but I can't really separate it from my life, and it's just like I have part time in this. It's my daily life, and yes, this is my because I have this art as a language. I feel responsible to use it in this.
Yeah, similarly, I don't really see a separation, especially because for me, art takes people into different realities, or get them to see situations from a different perspective. And I feel like there is in our society, there's a negativity around that, in terms of taking time to see things from a wider perspective, or taking time to actually think about other people's lives. Like what are the children over there going through compared to what the children over here are going through, and knowing that these kids all need the same thing. The basic needs are all the same for everybody. Like people don't really, I don't feel like people get time to think about those things. So for me, as an artist, to be able to create a space where people can really sit back and take in the stories of people, and realize how, although people are so different, we're actually so similar. Um, for instance, the project I'm working on this week, Souls and Cells, uh, myself and Crystal have such, we started in such different places. You know, Crystal grew up in Devon. I grew up partially in Jamaica, but we found so many similarities, like the fact that we both performed to a Michael Jackson song in high school, and the fact that both of us used to see our dads on weekends. But we're in completely different lives, but these similarities still are powerful and still bring us together and make us feel connected in some way. So for me, that's activism. The fact that we can bring people together, activism, activate people to see each other, not just your skin, not just your name, but to see me in you. Namaste. You know, that to me is what my work does. So for me, it's intrinsic. There's no separation between art and activism. You know, it's not. It doesn't have to shout. It doesn't have to scream. It doesn't have to be a fist in the air. It can just be two people hugging, and to me, that's powerful. Because again, intimacy is like being shunned on so many levels. I'm gonna stop now.
No, I was just going to say, as you were talking about the similarities between, is it Crystal you were saying you're working with, about her life in Devon and your life in Jamaica, and then the intimacies? It made me think of Hazel Carby's book, Imperial Intimacies, which is about growing up in Devon and then her kind of going in search of the Jamaican side of her family. So it's an absolutely wonderful book.
What's this?
Absolutely wonderful book. Hazel Carby, Imperial Intimacies. It's called. It's absolutely wonderful. Sorry, just the connections were playing. I wonder if I could kind of push you a little bit on this question around activism, and it's not so much about how you relate to activism, but about how other activists maybe relate to artistic forms of activism. You know, is it given the same kind of precedence or acceptance in wider activist movements? And then maybe the kind of the reverse of that, in terms of, is activist art appreciated in artistic circles in the same way that other kinds of art is, and whether you've any kind of experiences of either of those things. I can rephrase. Sorry, that was
no, I think, yeah, I think I haven't had any activists, like proper social activists who organize and come over to me and go, "Oh, you're just on stage. It's all your ego or anything." I have not had that because I think because the reality is, especially as a dancer, I could just follow the commercial side and go dance behind Beyonce, which would be great. I'd make more money. Um, but I just have this urge to shine a light on these things and to give people these experiences. So in the activist circle, I haven't experienced any like outcasting because my activism is art. Um, However, in the art industry, yeah, I have experienced it. Like other artists, like, why do you have to talk about this all the time? Why do you have to this? Why do you have to that? And I think it's because they don't even realize that their art is also activism. Because honestly, for me, the moment where we are sharing something, whether it's in a circle, whether it's a stage or whatnot, we're literally going back in time where our ancestors used to have story time around the fire. That's what it is for me. And to me, because of our society, that like capitalism has you like this, a hamster on a wheel constantly. There's no time to take time and be. So for me, it's just that ceremony of going to the theater, or we're gonna sit there, even watching a film, even though film is itself become another thing, but that's another thing. Going to watch a live gig, there is something spiritual and prehistoric about that space. You know, the Aborigines call it the dream space or the dream time. You know, for me, we're tapping into that when we create these performances or experiences. We're really, yeah, it's altered states that we're trying to take people to. And sometimes when you're performing, you feel yourself in an altered state, like whoever you're portraying kind of comes onto you. And when you come off stage, you have to peel that off and leave it there. Or when you come out the film or the filming, or you start making the song or the music, whatever. So for me, oh man, I forgot what I said. I go off on a tangent.
I was asking about the kind of artistic world, and you were saying that artists, they might not realize that what they're doing is activism, but in the process of kind of putting themselves in somebody else's shoes, if I understood correctly, they are engaging in that practice.
Yes. So even though they might shun it, they're still doing it. And similarly and then for the business side, the programmers, the producers, the artistic directors of venues, they are so concerned with bums on seats that they don't realize they can move culture. They can literally move culture, but they're so fixated on making the money from the building. How do we make the building money? So they just try to tap into what the commercial side is promoting and projecting and thinking, oh, it's about cool things. What's cool? So now that activism has become cool because rest his soul, George Floyd situation happened. So now everyone's like, oh, Black Lives Matter, or Refugee Lives Matter, or everyone now matters. It's now kind of cool. So it's weird, but you have to be a Jedi in this and still hold your integrity and know where you stand and be able to, okay, use situations or opportunities in order to still get the message out, because that's what's the most important thing always, is the message and the transformation for people. Yeah.
I want to ask you a question.
Go for it, please do.
Yeah, because like for me, sometimes and also I talk to my Syrian friends as well, and I have a friends, musician friends. The idea of like being an artist activist, it's a cool idea. So this pulled them back, and they have this conflict in their head. They don't want to be exotic anymore, so they want people to be interested in their music because of their music, not because there is like really a shiny subject to talk about. Refugee, they arrived to the seashore, and apparently it turned out they are like a Syrian rock band, very cool, coming from the sea to Europe. And so do you feel like this sometimes pulls you back because it looks like something trendy, and for you it's more than this?
That's a really good question. I think for the past 5 years, I haven't experienced it being cool. So I haven't felt like that. But I can feel that possibly going to happen soon because like this year has been the most busiest year for me, and it's still the busiest year for me. But a lot of it has been things that that I already planted seeds for years before, so it doesn't feel, my integrity doesn't feel so challenged. Um, I feel like my integrity would feel more challenged if, for instance, there's a lot of auditions now for jobs for black dancers, because I guess now it's good to have a black dancer in your company. Uh, and if I decided, ooh, that's regular money year round or whatever, I could just leave the stuff I'm doing and go be a spokesperson for someone else rather than myself and the art that I want to make. And that I feel pulled in because, you know, I have a child now and all these things. So having security feels like, oh, I need to do this. But my integrity says no. What are you going to lose? Or what are you going to, how shrunk are you going to feel if you then go and fit in someone else's box? Rather than creating my own box, ripping it up when I feel like, making a new box, you know, that freedom that I feel like I have, even though sometimes, yeah, if I'm not on the very overtly artistic activist flow, it feels like people aren't as interested. But then if I'm directly, well, especially now, I feel like 2 years ago, no, people weren't so interested. It felt like I really had to try and pull people to come to shows and talk to specific venues, will answer my emails. Some of them don't care. You know, it was difficult. Now it feels like people are opening up. Like, oh my God, we need to talk about this. So because I feel at home in this position, I don't feel pulled away from it. If people want me to perform for just an activist or just for a social artistic event because of the art that I make, I will turn up, because to me it's beyond the venue. It's the people who I'm gonna connect to, who are sitting in front of me. It's the people who are paying for those tickets. And it's not even about the money, it's about the soul, it's about the heart, it's about the mind that I made this piece of art for. I have to keep on coming back to that truth, and that keeps me grounded in who I am and what I'm about. You know?
I was going to bring in a question from the chat, from the Q&A. So one of our audience has asked, do you feel or think that the art itself takes on an identity of its own once it's out there in the public, interacting with different audience, different viewers and audience, or is it an extension of your own identity or positionality being expressed, or a combination of both? Apologies for my poor reading out there. Diala, did you want to go first?
Yeah, it's definitely. I don't do any performance, but definitely definitely it's part of my identity. And also, even if I have like a commissioned work, if it doesn't really talk to me, I don't feel like it's something I'm really interested in, I don't do it. So like even if I'm working on a different subjects, I believe in this subject all, and I have a big interest even before I get this to work on this subject or that. So like there is an illustrator, Japanese illustrator, her name is Yoko. she said, if you want to work on something that you really love and like subjects you really love, just put it out and you show people you work on this, so people, they come to you to work with you according to what you are really interested in. So for me, it started like this. So definitely like each artwork I do, it's part of me.
Yeah, I'll second that, definitely. I feel like every piece of work that I get to work on or get to be a part of has a life on its own, but it also still lives in me and still influences the next piece or another project. By the way, that's Crystal going around behind me. Just wanted to make it clear. Yeah, because even with Reckoning of a Refugee, which I was working on last week, and that's for Refugee Week, again, another Manchester thing. That's been something that I've been in conversation about since the year before the lockdown. And it feels, although we use archival letters, stories about certain refugees as a source material. So it's not my story, but it's still people's experiences that I can emotionally connect to, and it's something that I'm really interested in, like especially refugee stories, because it feels like the identity of a refugee goes against so much of what this very compartmentalized structure wants us to be like and to live like. But the refugee becomes this transient being because they have to move. It's not like a nomad is a choice. A refugee, something has taken place and one has to go to somewhere else. And I feel like this structure doesn't really like that very much. It demonizes it. You see it in the media, like Diala was saying. You see it in people's attitude then towards those positions. And I don't like that very much. So yeah, it feels like my work feels personal as well as global and universal.
Kind of following up on that, but also thinking back to where we've kind of started the conversation and talking about both of you saying your own kind of artistic practice about telling kind of different, more full stories with heart, with soul. And Diala, I was thinking particularly about you saying when you creating artwork for children in Syria and that desire to bring joy. And I wondered if you could say a little bit about kind of how you approach telling a sort of more full story, and how you bring in kind of unexpected emotions into stories about refugees. We're very used to being fed a kind of a diet of media stories about refugees that either kind of demonize or victimize, but telling a sort of more full story about the kind of full human experience and how that can kind of breaks out in moments through your artwork. And Akeim as well, you kind of talked about the sort of dance as central to your practice, and I wondered if your own joy in dance kind of comes through in that as well. So Diala, if you want to.
Yeah, it's not just like refugees, they've been demonized and victimized by others, but also like when I started working in the refugee camps, especially with kids, I was working also with adults, but my biggest concern is the kids. Also them, they lost the connection with themselves. Also them, they don't know who they are anymore. They have like double trauma. They are traumatized from the war, they are traumatized from their situation in the refugee camp. So sometimes you wave at them and they look behind because they don't know if they are even visible. So for me, I didn't study art therapy, but I did like courses, and I was like taking advices from my therapist friends to work on this kind of projects. So for me, it was the most important thing to know they are the hero of their story. When we go to the refugee camp, we are not going there to save their life, because this is not true. And we can't really go with this idea because it's heartbreaking for them. So for me, if I want to show the world or the kids in the refugee camps, I want to show that they are the hero of their story, at least because they survived all that, and they still can put smile on their face once they see us coming to have some activities. And that makes like a chain between all my artwork as well, because they influence me in the same time. I'm not just going there to help, they help me back as well, and they influenced my artwork as well. So one of the exercises I used to do to ask them to draw themselves who they think they are and what they think they will be in the future. It was like kind of like problematic for them in the beginning, but it really worked well because they felt visible again. And also I thought, like, if I am doing this with the kids, why I don't do it with myself? I can't really experience this with the kids and without doing this for myself. So when I moved to France and I was living in Paris, I did a collection. I called it Survival Mode, and it was a self-portrait for me, and it was very personal. And also that it was, if we are labelized as an activist talking about politics, I wanted also to do something extremely personal. I drew myself, and I can share it with you now if you want. So I don't know if you see.
We can see the window with the small icons, but not the full size
Okay.
ones.
Yeah. So yes, this I call it break after like living in a survival mode for a long time, and I don't know how to. And this is, I call it integration. This is shattered because like I wanted to talk about each phase I've been in while I reached to here. And this is solitude, when there was like the time I've been really isolated in a little village in France. So I had nothing but my thoughts. It wasn't really easy time, but it was the time that I can really face myself again after being distracted with all this craziness and madness that is happening in the world. So this is, for example, like it was an influence from the kids themselves. Everything is connected. You can't, I don't know, maybe for some artists they can really separate things, but for me, each project, it has an influence on the other. They are all chained, even if they have a collection. I call it life jacket. A collection I call it survival mode. A collection I call it whatever thing. But they are all connected to each other.
Thank you so much for sharing those images.
Yeah, thank you very much, Diala. Can you, seeing these images and also in the middle some of your works that I think were from Zaytoun and Zaytouna, can you tell us a little bit more about your more like editorial work that you did, the journal or like newspaper that you edited, and especially I think the experience you had. Because if I remember correctly, at some point you did that work already in exile, away from Syria. So how did you manage that?
So like an amazing group in the north of Syria, they contacted me. They already started this Zaytoun and Zaytouna, and I was already outside of Syria. I left to Istanbul. And at that time, I thought like I'm going for a few months and I'm going back. So I lost a lot of things that they used to occupy my time when I was in Syria, activism and also a life and a career. So when I was in Istanbul, I had zero of this. So I became addicted to news and drawing about the news all the time. So when they contacted me and they told me, we have this magazine and it's just we are a group of volunteers, like we volunteer to do that. So I thought, okay, that's it. We really need that, especially that kids, they don't go to school anymore, whether they are in Syria or outside of Syria, refugees inside or outside. So yeah, it was really interesting for me, this experience. And our aim was like to remind kids how normal life used to be before, because like for them, their visual memory, it's built around group fighters. They don't know that there is, for example, other kind of careers that could exist. So we wanted to remind them, like you can do art, you can do music, you can act, you can be many other things. Because like they really they grew, as I said before, childhood is a very short term. So they grew during the war, and it's 10 years so far. And even if they, like some of them, they were 4 or 5 years old when the war started, it's enough to create this kind of history in their childhood that it's not related to peacetime. So for us, we wanted to reconnect them to this normal life, even if it's like just imaginary life, just for them to have a clue that one day when the war is over, there is different things to do, not just fighting. Unfortunately, now it's stopped because volunteering work is not sustainable. You need everyone needed to work on their life, to do our paperwork, to start all over again, pay taxes, being a citizen in somewhere else. So, and there wasn't, it was like based on the nation, and people financially and also emotionally, they got exhausted. So it didn't continue, and we tried to have another fund for it, but it didn't work.
But it still ran for several years, which is very impressive to be able to conduct that kind of initiative in a war-torn country. Thank you very much, Diala. I have a broader question on collaboration. It's something that kind of both of you touch. Maybe you, especially Akeim. I saw one of your collaborators in the background. I know that you're involved with Peter Gator as well. Can you tell us a little bit more how you approach that kind of collaboration, and maybe as of maybe self-interest, how you approach in particular your work with Peter and his project Reckoning with Refugee.
So it depends. It's different in every situation. With Peter saw me perform Windows of Displacement at Chester Literature Festival in 2019. And from then we started to talk about, collaborating. And it was just workshops at first for the Journeys Festival. And then 2020 happened. And then it turned into, a film and a performance. And the way we've collaborated, like I've had conversations with Peter where he just tells me so much about the history of different major events that has happened that has caused mass migrations. And it's through him that we have the access to the archives of letters that have been sent to the UN by many different refugees, not just the UN, but also there's an organization in Switzerland as well. That have been sent by refugees since from the First World War all the way up until I think a decade or so after the Second World War. So in collaboration, it's all about what each person's role is and how we amplify the work and each other. So yeah, collaborating with Crystal is a different thing. Crystal's a dance artist in her own right and makes her own work, looking at human experiences, but from a different angle to where I do. And so it's like we're bridging these worlds together. And that's how collaboration really works to me. It's very intuitive. I don't really have a set way in which I do things with different people. It's all about the organic process.
Picking up on kind of the process of collaboration, we have a question in the chat, which is about what institutions can do better to support artists. So I'll read the question out. So at the early stage of your career or mid-stage as an artist, what do you think arts institutions could do for artists of displaced backgrounds? Is it about networks in the art system or in the host community, or writing arts grants or giving access to spaces? What can art institutions do better? I don't know if either of you want to jump in.
I think it's all of that. I mean, every chance is an opportunity, and for me, I enjoy working with researchers and journalists because I feel like we really have to hang out even together and have a drink. It's very interesting we complete each other's in a way. So I think like having an opportunity by researchers or by academic, or it puts also art in a different level that maybe before it wasn't as serious. And I believe it's very serious, and it's not just a luxury. It's really part of. It's a big participation in all what is happening in the world. So also, like if I want to talk about this collaboration, for example. Like for example, I worked with the PRIO Peace Research Center in Oslo, and I found it very inspiring to work with researchers, and it's really important also to have many discussions instead of like being analyzed from far after we die in a few years, for example, when we get old and we die, and then some other people, they can analyze our work and understand it differently. So, and I think like sometimes researchers to fill and to work on their materials, they put questions that they push us to question ourselves and create another artwork as well. So this is another part of the collaboration. It's not just giving opportunities, it's also make us questioning, oh yes, like maybe I didn't think of this, or maybe it was there, the idea, but in the dark somewhere, dusty area and in my brain. And when journalists or researchers, they put this question, it makes us like question more and kind of like give it a different shape, and create a different artwork again.
That's really interesting. As a researcher, I find that very often art shows me a different way of seeing something and looking at something, and asks different questions that make me rethink some of the kind of assumptions that I've brought to the table. So it's very interesting to me that works both ways. Akeim, did you want to come in on the question about what art institutions and indeed academic institutions can do to better support art?
Yeah, definitely. I think in both institutions, it's about, for me, it's about decolonizing. Because, for example, when it came to do a module in my training called Ideas in Arts, all I saw were white European artists as examples of ideas in arts. So I had to take it upon myself to go find people who look like me and be inspired by that. Not saying I wasn't inspired by what I was experiencing, but I didn't feel very connected to it. Like Dadaism, surrealism, great. I love it, amazing. But there was something missing for me, so I had to find it. So for me, I think institutions, especially institutions that are preparing artists to go out, there's something about that individual support of that person, that specific person. What are they interested in? You know, not pigeonholing them from the moment they come in, but seeing them as seeing a person as an ecosystem that has multiple facets to it that need to be fed. And sometimes the core of it isn't even creative stuff. Sometimes the core of it is are you worried about how much pocket money you have? You know, so making sure that there is funding to support individuals, not just from displaced backgrounds, but low income backgrounds, so that the access to independent study, because really and truly, developing an independent mindset is crucial to, well, I'd say being a human being, but also an artist, no matter the field you're in, because you have to research for yourself. Then you have to be able to collaborate with someone and take on their opinion and their foresight without getting sensitive about it and personal about it. I'll be like, oh, they just said this thing and it hurt my feelings. Yeah, well, you know, it's all in the view to empower and to raise up the level of the art. Same for academic spaces, to not devalue art, to not just, oh, it's just art, they're just dancing or they're just doing some painting. You know, that painting, that piece of dance can help an individual get a different experience of an academic idea that is actually more embodied, because everyone learns in such different ways. You know, some people are more visual, some people are more physical. I know for myself, I have to physically do things. If I've become better at maths because of the fact I have to do budgets now. Back in school, I used to struggle with it because I don't know what they're talking about. But now, because I'm actually living it, I am becoming a lot more comfortable with numbers. So I think there's that to take into account in terms of academic spaces. Who are these individuals? Not just because they're from displaced backgrounds, but what languages do they speak? Not just the language through their mouth, but physically as a person. How do you learn? How do you groove through the world? And that should be really celebrated and appreciated a lot more, I think.
Yeah, and that linked back to what we were saying before. In the end, the kind of difficult balance between giving a platform and not essentializing or not letting the displaced identity completely overshadowing the rest. And we were talking about academic space, but I think the question that I reckon Anna Cardencon asked in the chat about institutions and how they can help is also, there's also this question: how can they help, but how can they also not essentialize and remove anything else? Akeim, you were saying that, for instance, some institutions were a bit reluctant, maybe not reluctant, but surprised when you brought up a snake box, when you brought up play. There are other aspects of your artistic practice, and that they were like, wait, no, that doesn't fit in the identity that we kind of enforce on them. Okay, so thank you both. A reminder to the audience, of course, do not hesitate to ask question in the chat. So we have one from Peter. Thanks both for your fascinating insight. Do you have any advice for grad students in humanitarian studies or social sciences who may want to become involved in creative projects addressing political, refugee, displacement issues, but who may lack an extensive creative background?
I just can say, just approach to people, have a deep conversation, like maybe plusieurs de temps, like many times, and talk to many people as well, because one person, it's hard sometimes to present all the situation. So I think it's just like come closer. Sometimes, to be honest, I work, for example, with, I receive emails from students or researchers or different kind of people. Sometimes I feel like people, when they send, they relate to this situation as we are material to be studied, but it's better to see it. It's from person to person, to really go deep to it. I don't know better than this, but really you have to make it like personal first to go through this experience of whether refugees or displaced people, because also we have another life other than being a refugee or displaced.
Akeim, do you want to follow on that? Or?
I think Diala did an amazing job.
We have another question in the chat. This person is one of my favorite students, but she's sometimes not very good at being concise. So our question is, from the discussion I gathered that whether it's visual with fine arts, audible with music, kinetic with dance, or any other art medium and expression, that art is integral to translating and understanding all the complex senses and emotions that form social, conflict, disaster, and human issues, in a way traditional written text and research may not be able to express. Given the role of art, do you believe art should be a focus more in the education system, especially at the university level, to facilitate a medium to better understand these issues? Should art and means to understand said art form a part of the curriculum, not only for fellow artists, but students in general interested in these activism topics and research? So in a few words, basically the question of education and how art should be integrated in the curriculum. So she mentioned university level, and I think that links back to the previous question, but also, yeah, outside of university. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely it should be involved because like from my own experience, we can see reporters and documentaries, they are still not enough to tell the whole story. So sometimes, for example, I bring a photo of something happened and I redraw it, and by putting another layer to personalize what is really happening in the photo. So of course art is telling the story from another side, that of a photo, like journalist photograph, for example, or reporters, they can't really say it. It's really important to have a connection to this like history. Sometimes it's being told in a way it looks like facts, very dry subject. So art could make it like more alive. So definitely it should be in universities. It's very important also to document these stories, because like there is a big part of these stories, they look like a stone, you know, like they don't have a soul. It feel like I think it's very important to have a different narration for the same story.
Yeah, I totally agree that the curriculum, like academic curriculums, should definitely integrate the arts, not just for people who want to be artists, but for everyone. Because again, I just in terms of like I'm going to talk about the Dagara tribe in Mali, again from that book that I love so much, Healing Wisdom of Africa. Maladona Patrice Somé talks about how every child has a genius within them, and it's all about how we can pull out that genius or help that child pull out that genius so that they can self-actualize to their best and highest self. I feel like the arts can help anyone to do that, whether they want to be a mathematician or a scientist or a technician or whatever, because it becomes another channel for things that you can't always communicate through your mouth. In terms of like for trauma, you know, getting kids to draw or to write poetry, or not even just kids, but adults as well, when they've had a traumatic experience, it can be such a healing process. So definitely, it's not just a tool to create cool performances or to impress your friends. It's medicine for yourself, for your mental health, for your emotional health. So definitely, I really believe it's something very important.
Yeah, especially like you mentioned something about the trauma, it's reconnected people to themselves, and especially now in this modern individual world, people, they are extremely alienated. And I see, for example, here the culture in universities. I heard like in France, for example, it's going like backward because in like an industry world, it's not really that important. I don't think it's the society will do better without this. And with people, they don't have to be professional to do art. It's something could be very personal. Like when you go, you are not you are not like a sport person, but you can go jogging or swimming because it's good for your health. It's the same. It's another kind of sport.
Yeah, totally. I have two housemates who, one's a paramedic, the other one's a Pilates teacher, and they both paint. And when I come into the house and I see them painting, they're like the most happiest I see them. And it's for me, I see how they balance out the fact they like, especially for the paramedic, she's going out, she's saving lives like every day. And then when she gets that day off or that extra time and she goes and she sits down and she starts painting, you see the weight just sink away. The weight of the stress of everything she has to keep up just goes away. And that's why it's important. Humans, we take on a lot, you know, in this life. We have so much. So to have that outlet is really important.
And we need to normalize actually doing this kind of practice, because people are extremely shy, even sometimes with you as a dancer, you are professional, but sometimes we do a party, no one wants to dance because they don't know how to dance. And what is this knowing how to dance? I don't understand. I mean, you just you reconnect to your body. It's really a lot of alienation what is happening.
I really wanted to pick up on what you were just saying, and this idea that you first mentioned when you were talking about working with the children, this idea of this lost connection to yourself. And I want to kind of throw it over to Akeim as well and ask about you were talking about in terms of creating an alternative visual memory, which I thought was a really lovely way of kind of describing that. But I wonder about a kind of alternative physical memory as well. And I know that there's a real reluctance for people to perhaps engage in dance in a way that they might feel comfortable kind of dabbling in other things, but sometimes there's a sort of fear of being watched, fear of being kind of doing it wrong. And I guess that's true across all arts. I myself am somebody who is enthusiastically terrible at many different kinds of art. But I love to do that, and I think that there's something really kind of valuable about that. So I wonder, is there something about kind of about dance as a medium, or movement maybe as a medium, that can build an alternative kind of physical memory for people? You talked about kind of participatory projects that you engage in. I wondered if you could say a little bit more about that.
It's an actual scientific study that people with dementia, when they dance, it helps them remember things. Just off that, like boom, there it is, you know. So why are people not doing this all the time? You know, we know that, for instance, we're in a pandemic right now where our lungs are being attacked. Lungs on a metaphysical level is about grief. So why aren't we doing some dance rituals to grieve? when you go to certain funerals, I'll say from my culture, a Caribbean funeral, there's a thing in Jamaica that's called the 9 nights, where the house of the person who has passed on is open for 9 nights, and people come, they dance, they eat food. It's a ceremonial thing, and it's needed. I really feel like dance is a transformational tool. You know, indigenous communities, they dance when it's going to rain, they dance when they're harvesting, they dance when a new child is being born. Dance it's in our DNA as human beings to move. Our heartbeat is constantly dancing. All our atoms are constantly spiraling on a 360-degree angle. They're constantly moving, the whole universe, all the time. So why are we shy to do what we were born doing? Sperm cells dance. You know, like it's in us, it's intrinsic.
Now, because we live now in a time of achievement, and in every move you do now, you need to impress someone. So if you are not good enough, you don't do it at all, which is like a big loss of opportunities. It's every minute you live, like you go to a party, you don't dance. For me, I'm not a professional dancer, but I don't understand why we don't do this. It's really it's a very important connection. Also with art, like sometimes I run workshops, sometimes for kids, sometimes for adults, and they come and they think they are coming to learn some technique. I don't want to teach technique because we are not going to do something really huge. It's just like to switch off the audience idea and be free on the paper, and to give a space as well to discuss while we are painting. And like, it's just, we don't need to really impress each other.
Exactly. I taught a workshop, I taught in a school last month. I was invited to come and teach dance. And again, like what is teaching dance when everyone dances? So instead I use choreographic tools to get the young people in the primary school to create their own dances. And the principal kept coming up to me and said, why aren't you teaching them choreography? These kids are sitting in class every day being told what to do, what to think, who to be, everything. Let them make their own dances. You say you want them, the whole project was based around getting them to learn patience, tolerance, kindness, and acceptance. They will learn that because they're learning dances from each other and they're making their own dances, not by watching some guy come in and teach them some impressive moves. That is just basic and it's surface level. We need to go to the core. We need to go deep. We need to come back to our ancestors and how they dance because it feels good. You know, yes. So that's what I'm really about. And I think that didn't. It's weird because it's in a school space, and it just shows how what you call it, the animation of it has to be cool. It has to be. This is what's fun because it's on Britain's Got Talent or it's on X Factor and it's do a backflip and da-da-da. No, it can simply be me just lifting my finger and wagging it around and doing this, you know, like my 2-year-old daughter, when she dances, it's nothing super impressive, but what in terms of aesthetically, but what is impressive is how dedicated she is. It's how just she's just tasting that joy so much.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a return
Yeah.
to that idea of joy and the joy that animates the production of art.
Yeah, I think teaching methods these days teaches people to be extremely scared from mistakes. They immediately have to be designed very well and everything is fine.
Yeah, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you don't get it on the 8, then you're wrong. Nah, I don't want that. I don't want these kids to have to go through that, because that's what, if you want to be a professional dancer, that's the stuff you have to go through. Well, in some cases. So why am I going to give these kids something that could be traumatizing for them when they already don't feel like they're enough because they haven't got A stars, straight A stars? I want them to feel like they're kings and queens in their own rights.
Yeah. I think this is the real lockdown, actually. This life, what we are living.
Yes, we've been in a lockdown for ages culturally. You know, our culture, the culture that we have is locking us in our bodies, it's locking us in our minds. We need to unlock that before we can, you know, tackle, and then that other lockdown, it get tackled automatically because we are free in our hearts and spirits, you know.
We have another question from the audience. Anna says,
Róisín,
oh, sorry.
Just briefly, because it's linked to what has just been said, and then apologies for that. You mentioned lockdown, even though you're talking about lockdown beyond the pandemic, but can you briefly reflect a little bit on how, of course, it might be a bit of an annoying question, but how like COVID or like the pandemic has affected your artistic practice, your existence as an artist, and especially even more, Diala, I don't know, like in a, not saying specifically about Valence, but about like France being already quite a no-style society in many ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, can you reflect a little bit on that?
Yeah, actually, this COVID thing improved my life. Maybe it's the opposite, but first, I felt like the whole planet, it's like it's been like slower, and it's time like to chill a little bit and put like down some heaviness from on my shoulders. They've been like for a long time, so it's like I said before, living in a survival mode all the time, it's exhausting. So of course there is a lot of sadness came out to the surface, which is normal as well, because they've been always before, and there was like a like in the first month kind of a grief period. I was crying about things I didn't have time to cry about, and of course this is also it gave me opportunity to take space from creating art. And I was practicing this art of stillness, and I was writing instead. And then it gave me a bigger push to really be able to draw again after like cleaning my head from other things. I think this lockdown was really very useful to just chill and empty all this pollution in my head.
Yeah, totally. I second that. For me, the lockdown, there were certain pressures, personal pressures in family and stuff that really rose up to the surface. But in terms, and then yeah, creativity kind of took a backseat for a while. But then I started to make, and I started to just think of making just because I want to, not because there's a commission. Let me think of an idea and that kind of thing. And that kind of gave me back the power of my expressive voice, my creative voice, because it's not about yeah, I guess right before the lockdown, it started to be about, ooh, what's opportunity out there that I can fit into, rather than this is who I am, this is the stuff I like making. If you gravitate to it, then you do. And the lockdown helped me to get to that space because I had space away from the wheel. Um, and I started to just expand inside myself. And I feel very privileged to be able to do that because I know that a lot of people, it was because there was stress, loads of stressful, oh my God, moments. But I, I felt privileged to the fact that I had an artistic practice or a creative practice that helped me channel through the hardship, and also spiritual practices. You know, I started doing breath work every day and stuff like that, meditating a little bit more and just thinking about my health. I was working in the allotment, I was planting things. It really just gave me space. And again, I feel very privileged because of that, because it made me realize that there was a lot, especially in London, it's a lot of people who don't have gardens, don't have allotments, don't have access to certain things. And it also made me realize how important my work is as a facilitator of spaces where people can move in their bodies, because that helps people liberate and escape, for even for a moment, escape and also energize to step back into whatever hardships are in their life. So it made me realize how important I am as a human being to have that space.
Yeah, we have a comment from one of our participants related to that. So Jessica Hawkins, one of our colleagues, says, this isn't a question, but it saddens me so much that funding for the arts education in schools is dramatically being reduced. And I fear this will increase as schools try and catch up with work, with the traditional subjects missed during the pandemic. In the UK, education system is creating adults who hardly experience arts in school. Playing music has always been an important part of mine and my partner's childhood that I fear will be just for those who can afford to pay privately in the future. So again, kind of reflecting on that idea of space, not just kind of space in terms of the physical spaces, but also the time and the funding for people to be exposed to the arts, and particularly children, kind of missing out on that. We have another question, as I mentioned before, which is kind of returning to the idea of decolonization. So Anna asks, Akeim mentioned decolonizing the institution. Is there a form of colonialism in gazing on the refugee or speaking for them? When artists make works about refugees but do not have experiences themselves, are refugee voices being appropriated even when the intention is to help? I don't know if either of you want to jump in on that, or have
brilliant question. That's dope. Oh, that is amazing. Thank you for asking that question. I'll say in some situations, yes. But in some situations, no. Who dictates that? I don't know. Yeah, that's how that's the only thing I feel like I can say. For me, in my practice, yeah, especially for this reckoning project, I did feel that. I was like, I haven't completely experienced being a refugee. I've experienced migrating to another country and feeling othered. However, as a human being, then I have to put myself in that place of, as a human being who has the capability of empathizing, which we all do, and being in the position of privilege that I am as an artist who can put one's work on stage, I feel it necessary to do this. And because I'm speaking of this displacement, which refugees also experience, I feel it's necessary to do this. But there definitely are situations that I've said no to because it didn't feel necessary. Which, yeah.
Can I say something about this? Yeah, I understand that sometimes it's intentional, like, but for example, once I was working on a project, it's based on a research to tell a story of someone who was helping in a refugee camp to bring alternative education. So I had to draw the kids in the refugee camps. So I drew them from my own experience because I spent a lot of time with these kids there. So I drew them with a big smile. Actually, they laugh like crazy. They are full of energy and all that. So they said, no, we can't really draw them like this. They live in a refugee camp. And I was like, you really need to go to the ground to see how kids they react there. I worked with kids in Europe, and I worked with kids in a refugee camps. Kids in the refugee camps, they grab life because they miss it. They have the lack of this. They work sometimes all day collecting potatoes and farming, and while they are 8 years old. So when you go to work with them, they are full of life. I understand that the aim is to empathize these kids, but actually I couldn't draw them. They look like they are suffering. They are suffering, but when you go to work with them there, because they are suffering, their reaction is laughing like crazy. And I can't really delete this fact they are laughing like crazy in this way. Because, for example, when I work with kids here, they are very shy. It's really hard to involve them in many activities because for other reasons, but kids there, they need to be involved. So when you go there without even telling them what is happening, what kind of activities we are going to do, they immediately grab the brushes to start painting with you, which is like, this is something remarkable as a psychological situation. And I can't really make them look sad just because we want to empathize them in front of the audience. We need to understand how they really look like.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question about whether there's aspects of that experience. Of course, there's aspects of that experience that only someone who has lived it will be able to communicate in a particular way, but that doesn't necessarily mean there aren't ways that we can empathize and connect our own lived experiences to other people's lived experiences. And I think the same tension obviously exists within academic work. You know, we write about things we haven't necessarily experienced and we try to make sense of them. And I think the kind of the emphasis of decolonization isn't just about the positions that we can speak for, but about the work that we're doing. And are we doing the work to try and change the system, trying to create the space for other people to speak? So I think there's a kind of interesting connection there to that idea of space and opening up spaces for people, again, physical spaces, but also the funding, the opportunities for people to tell different kinds of stories and actually the fullness and complexity of that.
And on the other hand, I was working on another project. So there is a kid in the story telling his story, how he lost his brother, his father and his sister during the war. So they asked me, oh, could he smile a little bit? And I was like, why? I need to tell the truth, whether they are laughing or that it should be really transparent. And here, I can't really make him laugh smiling while he's saying, oh, I lost my father and my sister, because it always depends on the audience, but we can't really relate on the audience to create how we tell our own story, because the story, it's already there. We have to tell the story as it is. And here it will be, they want something positive, but it will be toxic positivity. And I can't really do it in this way. I can't really say, oh, even if he lost this, he's still smiling. I don't want to encourage this smile even, because I see like now, regardless of the war, we have this, we encourage people being strong, and we like push them away of being vulnerable and authentic. Sorry if I went too far from that question.
No, I think that's absolutely. I was just kind of digesting what you were saying. I think that's the idea of kind of using art to reveal the truth of situations. It comes back to the idea that you were talking about before about, you know, sometimes art being able to tell a more truthful, even in a more abstract form, can tell a more truthful story than perhaps a photograph, and being able to kind of communicate the completeness and fullness of different experiences, whether those experiences are of joy or of extreme sadness. And it goes back, I think, to the kind of one of the questions that we've sort of danced around but not addressed directly, which is the kind of risks of co-optation that come with art, and how it can be kind of co-opted to serve particular agendas. And is that something you kind of worry about, think about? How do you address that?
Yeah, yeah, of course, everyone has a different way of coping, but sometimes this coping mechanism, it's not transparent, because sometimes like we want to cope, but we want to fit in what the people they expect from us, what the society expects from us, whether it's by art, whether by behavior or any kind of decision we have. So this is what really scares me the most. Like, for example, I went to the school once and I wanted to tell them what is happening and everything is in my head. And they told me, no, you have to be positive. And it was like, you want the truth or you want whatever thing. So I feel like this is, it's another pressure. We have our own story. It's heavy enough, and then we have to tell the story, and we have to cope in a way that suits the others to feel comfortable. I can't really cope while making others comfortable. I need to cope in my own way. And I think like also people, they really need to learn to be authentic and to cope in their own way.
Yeah, I feel like if you need to cry, you gotta cry, you know. And it's such a healing thing to shed tears. There are, in situations like what you mentioned, Róisín, I just try to stay clear from. I try to really read people. It's like, yeah, certain programmers for whatever reason will, yeah, want your work because, oh, now it's in trend, or now it's cool, and now it'll make them look cool. So those situations, yeah, I try to steer from. Um, it's for me, yeah, it's, as Diala is saying, it's all about authenticity, and if the story that you're trying to tell, if it's really truly about pain, then it's about pain, and it has to stay that way because that's the truth of what it is. And yeah, you will find, I've found sometimes people say, oh, can you say it like this instead, because you don't want to hurt your audience, you don't want to scare them or something. It's like, no. this is what the story is, this is what happened, like this is what they need to know. Yeah, it's a strange thing.
I'm very conscious that we're, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Róisín.
I was going to say, I'm very conscious that we're coming up to the end of our time, and we've asked a lot of you, both in terms of questions and kind of reflecting on your own practice and your own experiences. So I don't know if you have any kind of last closing comments or thoughts that you particularly wanted to make. Want to make space for that if you do. Otherwise,
maybe a more practical question for both of them. What's the best way, Akeim? I know that you have a newsletter. You can register on your website. Is that correct? And Diala, what's the best platform to keep in touch with you? Is that your Instagram account? Oh, Diala,
yeah. My Instagram is awful.
Sorry.
Yes, because it's very messy. I don't really take care of it. It's like, you know, a forgotten garden. I can say my Facebook page. Meanwhile, till I just like really move and do my website. So this is, I share it with you here. I don't know if other people, they can see it, but this is the place the platform that I update the most with the events I do, with my artwork, animation, everything.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to you both. This has been an incredible conversation. I feel very privileged to have got to be part of it and got to talk to you about this. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to us. So thank you so much. We're about to have the very uncomfortable Zoom ending where everything just suddenly shuts off and you're back your own bubble. So I thought I would address that now, and just to say thank you so much for being part of this conversation, for leading this conversation. Really, I've really appreciated it, and I'm sure the rest of the audience have too. You, Akeim, you also have the is it a trailer coming out this week for the? Did you want to say something a little bit about that?
Yeah, we have the trailer for Reckoning film coming out. Hopefully this Saturday. It's a very quick turnaround. We literally just finished filming Friday. So yeah, Ashley, good luck, Ashley, the filmmaker, just putting it out there. Yeah, really looking forward to that. It's yeah, you'll see. It's a really incredible project, and we've had a really cool team on it. Thanks to Outreach for getting me involved. Journeys Festival, Mandela Ray, the playwright, Ashley Carell, the filmmaker. Yeah, it's a collaborative effort, and I feel like we've really created something special. So I hope it gets people feeling and thinking, and realizing that even in today, our modern day that we live, a lot of these issues that we see springing up nowadays in the news and whatnot existed and continue to exist. And you know, there's a massive question of how do we really end these things? How do we really change? Yeah.
Fantastic.
And the trailer is going to be available on the Journeys Festival website?
Yeah, on the Journeys Festival website, and I think on YouTube as well. Follow me at Toussaint to move to keep updated with things. You can sign up to my newsletter in my link tree. If my website link don't work, I sometimes get messages like, "Oh, the website's not working." So yeah, the link tree in my Instagram, that's the most secure one. So yeah, just follow me at Toussaint to move, TOUSSAINT TOMOVE.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. We've talked a lot today about the importance of real conversations, and this has been really, really great to be part of. So thank you very much. And,
yes, thank you so much
for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
I thank you for I now I had the opportunity to meet Akeim, and
it's a real shame that we're not able to meet in
physically
person
together. Yeah, one day I'm sure.
Maybe one day we can bring everyone together for more conversations.
Yes, let's stay in touch and make something happen. Right, thank you so much. Lovely to meet you, Diala.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.